Critical Blast, where pop culture gets blasted.
And hello again, everybody. I am RJ Carter, Senior Managing Editor at criticalblast.com. And tonight we are reporting once again from the Critical Blast Caverns to talk about those 4 irradiated heroes that everyone knows and loves from the 80s, as well as a few other things we'll get to. But yes, we're talking about adolescent radioactive black belt hamsters, adolescent radioactive black belt hamsters, heroes in a habit trail hamster. That's how it went, right? I know that song's in my head for some reason. But to help us get to the bottom of all the cedar chips, we have with us here the hamster creator, Don Chin. Don, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Happy, what is it, Wednesday? Yes, happy Wednesday.
I had no idea. Is it September yet?
I know. It's going by real quick.
Well, I came down here in March, and I haven't left. It's a true story. I mean, my company sent us all home for the beer bug, and they brought people back in waves, and they pretty much figured out that, IT folk can work from home, and they don't have to pay for as many lights. So they've said, you're not coming back till the first of the year.
Wow.
And so it's like I come down here at 7:30, I leave at midnight.
So are you also, I've seen on your Amazon page, you edit, some anthologies. Do you have a other job besides that gig?
I do everything I can to make money. But yes, I've been working IT for nearly 30 years. That's to pay for the opportunity to edit things like The Devil You Know, which is the newest anthology we have, or also editing. Thank you for the opportunity to shill. Also
You're
editing
welcome.
The hardcover superhero novel, Bulletproof Origins by Stephen J. Mitchell.
Wow.
Both of these are linked in the description below if people are interested in checking that out. But don't go anywhere right now. You can check that out after the show. The description's not going anywhere.
I think I saw on, there's a Kindle, I can get a free download of your, the one with the title that has gods in it.
That would be, Gods and Services. That was our first attempt. This is back when I thought that I could do everything. So I even worked on the cover art for this one here.
I like that. That's very creative.
It was
nice.
It was an abandoned storefront in Waco, Texas, and I just took the long shot of it and then photoshopped everything else into it and said, "Yeah, that looks professional." And then I got it printed out. I'm like, "Yeah, it doesn't really look like a book, but it could have been
very cool." Better. I see Delphin Barrel, who's actually working on one of my projects, said hi, Don. So hi, Delphin.
So this is one of your current projects, because you said you're still in things.
Yes, the X-Farce Reloaded, which we can talk about if you like.
We will definitely do that, because let's just go ahead and bring up some of these images here that I've got of things that Don Chin has been working on. Yeah,
that's the tax, which actually we did in the 90s. Sam Keith and I worked on the hamsters. And then Sam went on to work with Image Comics, and he did the Max, which was a big hit and still a lot of fans of his out there. And then he went to draw a lot of work for Marvel and DC. So he's got a Facebook fan page with, probably less than a couple thousand rabid fans. And
he did this little thing with Neil Gaiman too. I don't know.
Yeah, that's what it was. Sand guy or So a funny story was that he worked on the hamsters before Sandman, and then also Mike Driggenberg, who was a guy I've done some work with. He collaborated with Sam and Neil to form Sandman right after we did Enchanter, which is, I think I have a reprinted copy, but Enchanter is a book that we're probably going to bring back in color in 2021. And Mike Driggenberg drew the first
that cover looks very familiar.
Three issues. Yeah. So anyways, I kind of have a weird 6 degrees of separation with Neil Gaiman. I've never met him, but his Sandman was right after Sam and Mike did projects with me.
Well, yeah, Sandman is 2/3 of your team. So
yeah, basically
2/3 of Sandman is your team. So
yeah, those guys are, Mike he was a teenage prodigy. When he sent his portfolio to me, I thought, man, this guy's really good. And he says, well, I'm only 19. And he drew this book for Eclipse when he was 19. I went, this guy's going to go places. He's extremely slow, but he's very, very, he's very, very good.
Quality over quantity is the way to take it. I was probably 19 when he was doing that as well, because when I first saw the hamsters, and what are we going back far enough? Was the hamsters the very first thing you did?
No, actually, hamsters came out in '86, and before that, I actually worked for. You probably remember this Mad Magazine knockoff called Cracked.
I loved Cracked.
Used to be on the newsstands. Yeah, it had Sylvester P. Smith.
Smythe.
And John Severin did a lot of their awesome covers and movie spoofs. So I used to pick up Cracked when I was a kid on the newsstand. I like Mad Magazine too. And I started submitting stories to Cracked after I got out of college. And I actually had a few things published, and issue number 200 was the very first Cracked magazine, my first professional work. And so I did a little bit of work for them. And then I started to self-publish some kind of underground type magazines called Overload. And Overload was a kind of a Eureka, California based group of artists. And then we started to incorporate other people from around the nation who saw this kind of fanzine turn into a kind of a cult type of hit. It was kind of a combination of Mad Magazine and Heavy Metal Magazine, if you can imagine that. And so Parsonovich and I, Parsonovich is the gentleman who drew the hamsters for the first few issues. He and I went to high school together, and we had a cartooning class, and that's how we met. And he and I are polar opposites. He's like, I'm like this kind of a right-leaning conservative Christian guy, and Parsonovich was like a hippie flower child. And so we collaborated together, and that's how the hamsters kind of came into existence.
That's impossible in 2020. You realize?
I know it is.
It's like
barriers.
One of you has to get the other one fired if you're working together now. It's just.
I've lost contact with Parsonovich. I think he's still around my area. He kind of went off, and I think he still draws like independent stuff, but we haven't done any hamsters since like the 80s.
Delphin is asking if you worked with Mort Todd while you were at Cracked Magazine.
I did not work with Mort Todd. Did he work on Cracked? I think who else was on there? Bill Ward was a famous guy, but I never worked with him. He was on Cracked, and I always wanted to work with Severin, but unfortunately I didn't get the chance to write movie spoofs. But so that was kind of my first claim to fame, was Cracked Magazine. And then hamsters came about because I used to work and own a comic book store here in Northern California. And I kind of heard through the grapevine there was this weird Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles thing that was taking off like wildfire. And I had met the publishers of Eclipse, who were Dean Mullaney and Kat Ironwood, at some San Francisco area conventions when I was selling Overload. And so I kind of knew them. And when the Turtles came out, I said, hey, Parsonovich, why don't we spoof these guys? So he actually drew this issue, and we didn't have a publisher. And on a whim, I sent it to Eclipse, and Eclipse said, we like it, but we don't want to foot the printing bill. We'll help you distribute it, but if you print it, Don. So I got a loan from my parents, and they solicited the book, and it exceeded all their expectations. I think we actually had like a 60,000 initial print run, and then we had a second printing, which was about half of that. So the first issue of Hamster sold like 90,000 copies, black and white.
Can you imagine selling 90,000 copies of anything in today's market?
I know. I would be very happy.
You'd be like number 1 or 2 in the industry.
Oh, at least. Yeah, it's sad. I mean, I've been watching people that are in the industry now, and just seeing DC kind of, close their doors to a lot of people, and just I see these numbers of what's selling in the top 20. And I'm going, wow, how are they even making money? They can't be.
Yeah, but that the mid 80s was a really weird time It was a good time for comics because there was so much stuff out there. But I'm blaming you because you're the first one I remember doing this. TMNT was a spoof. It was already spoofing. It was spoofing Daredevil. It was spoofing Ronin. It was basically saying, "Hey, Frank Miller, we're making fun of you." And then you came along and spoofed the spoof.
Yes.
With adolescent radioactive black belt hamsters. Yeah. Which gave rise to the preteen Dirty Jean Kung Fu Kangaroos and the geriatric something that I can't remember, but it was gangrene
geriatric
Dirty Jean, gerbils. Jiu-jitsu gerbils.
Yeah. There was probably like a dozen knockoffs after the Turtles, but it
was an age, a radiation, a martial art, and an animal, and you just played Scrabble with it until you pulled one out.
Right. Did you remember Boris the Bear came and just annihilated everybody?
I do remember Boris the Bear killed everybody. Yes.
I was flattered that my characters got decimated by Boris the Bear, so that was fun.
Man, that brings back memories. I was thinking of things like the Pork Knight and Nat Rat and
Mark Martin. He actually did a hamster's backup story in our last issue. I really liked his stuff.
A lot of that stuff was really good and was really creative because people saw that the Turtle guys basically looked like they kicked that thing off out of their garage instead of going to World Color Press in Sparta and where I lived.
Wow.
Oh yeah, you couldn't buy a comic book anywhere in Sparta, Illinois, or 30 miles radius around it because they were all printed there, and everyone just brought the print runs home. You went to yard sales to buy comic books.
That's cool.
It was very cool. If you knew somebody there, like my dad did, I was in gold. I was just like, can we go visit this guy again?
So you started reading, maybe, I think I listened to one of your earlier videos, and I think you grew up reading comics in the 70s. Is that correct?
In the 70s. I was reading comic books before kindergarten, and I didn't tell anybody I could read till I was in first grade because I thought everybody could. I didn't think it was something that needed to be announced. But yeah, I've got an article about it on the website, criticalblast.com. That's everything I ever needed to know I learned from reading comic books. And
very good.
It was one of those things where I was in first grade finally, and the teacher had, they always hold up the big signs with the big words on them, and she's reading real slow so we can try to follow along. And I'm sitting here doing this. And she's like, would you like to read to the class? Because, she's trying to be a smartass and trying to get my attention, focus back and embarrass me. And I'm too young to get sarcasm. And I looked up and I said, plants create energy through a process called photosynthesis, in which they take sunlight through chlorophyll. And she's like, okay, we're going to go talk to your parents now.
Wow. And that's Did you get skipped a grade because you were kind of ahead of
in the reading class only.
Yeah, but I was kind of that way too. I had a really good reading comprehension, and a lot of it was because of comics and Peanuts. I used to read Charles Schultz Peanuts religiously, and I had a really great vocabulary and comprehension at a young age. But
now, I was small. They'd have kept me back if they'd have asked me anything more about it, because they'd have said, well, what's chlorophyll and photosynthesis? I'm like, well, that's how the Floronic Man gets his power when he fights the Flash. Because that's where I get, or how Poison Ivy takes over Gotham City. Because that's how I knew it all. I was like, you want to know about antimatter and matter? They can't touch, or there'll be a big explosion. So don't bring antimatter into the class.
Nice.
Flash and Superman were my jam. That's what I learned everything from.
So you're a DC kid growing up?
I was a DC kid growing up, yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. I liked them both. I actually got more into comics by the way of the funny animal, like a lot of Harvey comics. Delphin and I were kind of talking about that. He misses, Richie Rich and Baby Huey, and so I actually kind of got weaned on funny animal comics. And then when I got a little older, I was introduced to Marvel and DC, and
for some reason,
collecting bug.
I didn't mind the characters in it, but I don't know if there was a different printing process or a different ink mixture. But when I was a kid reading Marvel comics, I would get headaches. It was like I didn't feel good, and I was like, no, I don't. I went back to the brighter colors, I guess, of the DC stuff, and I followed those characters better.
Okay.
But it was. I'm sure it was psychosomatic. It was just like
Yeah. I remember Marvel printed that one issue of Kiss with the Kiss's blood, so Maybe they had some kind of weird voodoo stuff going on.
They like to print in blood every once in a while. It's every 20 years they got to renew the contract with the devil. But yeah, so you came out with the hamsters though in mid '80s, and like I said, that just kind of started the snowball downhill with all the studios because every retailer had seen what happened with the turtles after the first couple of issues and the price skyrocketing, and they didn't want to be left out of what the next turtles was going to be. So they not only got all this fun good stuff that we talked about, but they got everything else that people literally with a mimeograph machine and a stapler were putting out, and it led to this glut in the early 90s of all this independent stuff.
Yeah, I saw that whole decade of feast to famine, and that's kind of why I got out in the 90s, as my wife and I were publishing and doing gangbusters, and then the market kind of imploded when there was too much product, and Marvel and DC were, doing all their number ones with variant covers, and then the baseball strike hit. So, you had comic book stores kind of too much inventory, and then they weren't moving their sports memorabilia stuff, and then it just kind of shrunk. So I got into real estate, and that's what I've been doing for almost the last 22 years. But,
that's where the smart money is.
Yeah, so, I miss the creative part of comics. So that's kind of why I'm coming back. I got the bug, and so we're going to do some fun stuff in 2021.
To quote Lex Luthor from the Superman movies, land, they're just not making any more of it.
That's true. Very true.
So that's a good thing to be into. And for making comics now, like we were saying in the green room before we started, this is I hear so many people saying that the comic industry is collapsing, and I don't see that to necessarily be true. I see the big two maybe collapsing under their own weight, but I liken it to like these two giant trees that have been overshadowing the village, and one falls and the other and takes the other with it, and everyone in the village says, "Oh my God, there was an entire orchard behind these two trees here that are smaller trees that we can get to more easily, and they're just as good and just as fun." So I see all these independents springing up.
Yeah, I think it is going to be kind of a renaissance for the independents, and I like guys like Alterna. Obviously, what Ethan Van Sciver's shown can be done is a great model, and so yeah, I think it's just the movement seems to be going direct to consumer versus going through the local comic book stores. But I have a heart for comic book stores. I want them to still be around, but I think with coronavirus, and it's kind of put a little bit of a hardship on them, and
it was hard on them. We have a show every other Saturday called the LCS Guys, where we have, and we started it during the coronavirus, where we had 4 or 5 LCS owners from around the country just kind of get together and talk about how they were staying in business and what they were trying to do to survive. And now, of course, we sit around and talk about, how Diamond screwed up the last shipment and and what packing is like and what's selling and what's not.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I like to walk into a store and I go into a store for 3 items and I come out with 7. Because I'm going to look for stuff that I don't know exists. I don't read the Diamond previews. I look at what's on the shelf, staring me in the face, and thumb through it and say, "This looks cool," or "No, I think I'll pass on this."
Yeah, the stuff I picked up just, I don't buy anything on a regular basis, but when I went to a comic book store, I'm like you. I shop visually and I see what's out there, and the things that I buy wind up being like the what'd you call it? They're kind of repackaging ROM and Micronauts and the stuff that I grew up reading, but they're doing it with new creative teams. And obviously I like the artwork, and the printing is much better than it used to be on, back in the 70s with Marvel. So art and character are usually what kind of help me make my decision when I'm buying. And I used to be really creator driven, anything John Byrne or Frank Miller did, I would buy. So I liked a lot of specific creators when I was growing up, like Jim Starlin and just a lot of guys that did awesome artwork and story. Walt Simonson's run on Thor was a classic, one that I liked. And on DC side, obviously The Dark Knight is a classic. Watchmen, so I can kind of I think I can kind of relate to you in that.
I'm kind of surprised too that, you know, so many of these creators that we did follow back in the same, because I think we're following the same era of comics here. So many of these guys are still around and are still capable, but we've got and there came a generation that remembered not Joseph, and they're doing comics now, and they don't know how to do them.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I don't know what all the legendary guys are up to. I imagine, you know, they can draw commissions and make a living, but with the big two going out of business, I think they're going to have to start following the crowdfunding trend.
Yeah, a lot of them are, and if they all would come together and, you know, do the whole Justice League thing of Justice League creators, I think they would hasten the demise of the big two real quick, because everyone would say this is the new Mount Olympus. This is where the gods went, and they're making comics now. But you're making comics, and you're going to put some new ones out. Are you going the crowdfunding route?
Yeah, that's what my first project will be, which is the X-Farce Reloaded. Do you have any graphics on that, RJ?
I do have some graphics on that.
Awesome.
I've got to get past the X-Cons. I don't know if that's current.
Okay,
or
I can
older.
explain that. So back in 1992, after my hamsters kind of did their thing, Eclipse came out. They were still in business, and then Rob Liefeld came out with his X-Force for Marvel, which had Cable in it. So I thought, hey, maybe I should spoof it. So we actually did X-Farce for Eclipse, and that's how I first met Bill Mouse, who went on to be my partner in Parody Press in Entity Comics. But X-Farce was a black and white spoof that we did, and we sold a lot of copies of this, but it was originally going to be with a Todd McFarlane cover, but for some reason he backed out of that. So we did sell it, and it was with a Bill Mouse cover, and I think, you know, they probably sold 50,000 plus of X-Farce, but it was a black and white book, and I've always liked it. So we actually did some spin-offs of X-Farce called the X-Cons, and X-Cons came after X-Farce. That's when we were doing Parody Press. So X-Farce came first, and then X-Cons came a little bit later when Eclipse had folded, and Bill and I said, well, we can do this stuff ourselves. So our very first Parody Press comic in the 90s was called The Unfunny X-Cons. So we're bringing back X-Farce in a book called X-Farce Reloaded, and what it's going to be is at least 48 pages. 21 is going to be recolored work. There's Delphin's coloring is right there. Delphin's in the chat, and he's going to be coloring the majority of the book, and also going to be drawing some pages of story with me. So it's going to be about 2/3 of reprinted material, but in full color, which it's never been presented before. And then 1/3 of it will be new material. And we've actually got some good talent contributing to that, like Mike Barron will be doing a parody. We also have the guys that are doing the Mighty Mascots book for Alterna.
Oh, very cool.
They're going to be doing a 5-page story. So it's going to be kind of like an anthology comic. It's going to have, you know, the X-Men from the Liefeld era spoofed, and then the X-Cons are more of the Stan Lee, Jack Kirby era parody, which we're going to do. And Mark Lewis is the gentleman who did the X-Cons cover that you showed earlier. That's brand new. He just sent that to me like a couple days ago, finished. And so that's going to be a variant cover on the X-Farce book. So we have about three or four different variants that are in the works, and that was the very first one that we got back. So we're scheduled to have Bill Mouse redraw the X-Farce original cover, but now it's, you know, he's gotten a lot better since then. There's a gentleman who's really good named Rob Willis who's going to be doing a cover for us. He recently did a Black Flag cover for Dan Fraga's book that just is mind-blowing. So he's commissioned to do a cover. And I'm talking to Billy Tucci of She, and there's a chance we might be doing something hush hush with his character.
Oh boy, oh boy. You know, Rob Liefeld is doing a lot of crowdfunding with running in that same circle of names that you're throwing out there. It would be interesting to see an alternate cover by him spoofing his own stuff.
I wrote to him on Twitter. He didn't tweet me back, so he might have bigger fish to fry, you know.
We just need to all start hitting him up, you know. Just tweet storm him. So, hey.
I actually have a funny story, RJ. I didn't mention this, but you did ask me about my earlier career, and after I did Cracked, I tried to do a little bit different, you know, not just humor stuff. So a friend of mine named Ken Meyer Jr., who had been sending me some submissions when he knew I was doing comic publishing, he said, "Hey, I'm doing this short story in this book called Megaton. It's kind of a superhero anthology that this guy back east named Gary Carlson is doing." So he sent me some Megatons, and that series actually had the first published work of Liefeld's Youngblood, and also Eric Larson's Savage Dragon was in Megaton. And then it had a character called Vanguard and Berserker. And so I did a short story with Ken in Megaton. And so Liefeld was in that fanzine before he became a big star. So if you look at Megaton issues, you might come across that.
I just put away my comic book price guide too, because I was wanting to see how much those adolescent radioactive black belt hamster copies were going for. I'm not going to finance my house with them.
You can still pick them up pretty reasonably on eBay just because the print runs were so high. But I did see some, you know, CGC graded ones go for a few $100s. So that's exciting.
I like seeing CGC for price value, but then I can't read the book.
I know. That's just like, it's kind of oxymoronic to have that. I can understand you got to slab it to keep it in that, but then no one will ever get to read it again.
Exactly. What are we doing? Saving this to put into, like, you know, the next
time capsule?
Voyager, throw it in the next Voyager launch and just out to the stars. Here, aliens, this is what we do. Oh my God, they wear capes and destroy each other. We must obviously wipe this planet out.
Awesome. So, so that's just a roundabout way. Whenever anybody decides to make comics a career, you gotta pay your dues. I mean, no one just comes out of the gate saying, "Hey, I'm ready. Here I am, Marvel and DC." My early stuff was so bad, and I used to get submissions from people, and unfortunately, they weren't great. So every once in a while, you would get a submission, and you just go, "Wow, this is amazing." So a lot of guys that came to work for me when I was doing Entity Comics, they're doing stuff for X-Men, and like Lionel Francis Yu, he was the first. We published him, and Jay Anacleto, who does a lot of beautiful cover work. He was a Entity alum, and so it's fun to just see these guys develop from, you know, kind of amateur status to being, you know, higher tier.
It is a lot of fun
creators.
To see the early work of people. I had Jim Ballant on a couple of months ago, him and his wife Holly, and you know, I'm not going to show the cover. I recently got the Kickstarter for Tarot, but I bought the cover that I would really, really like, and I can't show it on YouTube without getting flagged. But during the interview, I did bring up some of his earlier works. I said, "Here's, you know, hey, this Catwoman you did were great here. Oh, by the way, here's this thing from Eternity called it was from Eclipse called Shattered Earth." And I mean, it was like, you know, maybe his second or third work, and it was probably his first cover. And it was as far from Jim Ballant as you could think it possibly be. It was a lot more Liefeldish than it was Ballant, because the legs were extra long on there were clouds on the ground. But it's definitely his signature, and it's neat. It's not like you're gonna, you know, again, have it be a high value collectible, but the fact that you can say this is where it started, look at how it evolved is great for comic book studies, I think.
Yeah, I think well, Enchanter will probably be something we do in 2021, and like I said, that was Mike Dringenberg's first. Actually, it wasn't his first published work because I think he did some hamsters inking for me. But as far as standalone artwork by himself, that was Mike Dringenberg's first published work. So we're probably going to recolor that in digital format. But I mean, you can see back then this kid was going to be big, and now he's doing, you know, Tolkien covers for books, and Sandman obviously was a big his claim to fame.
Now, do you have a preference for which crowdfunding route you're going to go? I mean, there are two right now that are everyone knows. I'm sure there are others that nobody knows, but
most likely Indiegogo.
Okay.
I've been kind of doing some research, and people say, you know, what's the pros and cons of each? Should you do both? And most people say, you know, most people like Indiegogo and their fees are less. And so I don't think I'm going to do both Kickstarter and Indiegogo. There's some politics too, obviously, with both companies.
Well, yeah. If you know, if you feel strongly enough about something, you shouldn't compromise your principles to make the buck. It's perfectly
right.
fine.
So I'm hoping once we get a few more covers in that I can tease to the fans, we'll start the campaign on Indiegogo with the newsletter sign up, and then kind of roll into the book, and hopefully it'll be out in, you know, first quarter 2021. Delphin's coloring right now, and he's doing a great job, and we've got just various people working on stories and art. So it's fun. I'm writing probably a couple stories in there. I don't know if I sent you the one that's got no artwork in it. It's intended. I think people might get a kick out of that, because I think I remember you just talking about the John Byrne.
The Wendigo versus Moon Knight in a snowstorm.
Right. Yeah. I think you were talking with Graham Nolan about that just a couple days ago.
Yeah, I'm pulling that up here just to show people what we're talking about. So the Exocons meet the infringers in Mission Antarctica.
Right. So my friend Kurt Hathaway, who's been my letterer for decades, he actually worked a lot with Rob Liefeld and Extreme Studios and Image. He's been my logo and letterer guy for forever. So I remember he did a independent book in the 90s that was written by somebody else, but it was nothing but word balloons and sound effects. So I thought, I think I'd like to test my writing mettle and see if I could pull this off. So I did a 3-page story that's completely white with word balloons. And so that's going to be in the book. And it's basically what happens when the spoofs of the X-Men and the Avengers meet in Antarctica, and one ship accidentally lands on top of the other.
Oh, we have a very good question in the chat here now, because this is something I did not know about. And maybe it's just, you're going to have to inform me on this. Is the adolescent radioactive black belt hamsters / cyberfrog crossover still happening?
Hi, Creator Quotient. That's a great question. Some of you may know that Ethan Van Sciver and I were planning to do a crossover with our characters.
I didn't.
And oh, you didn't know that? It was funny because, gosh, it was like 2 or 3 years ago. I was at a baseball game in San Francisco, and I thought, wouldn't it be cool if Cyberfrog and hamsters kind of got together? Because they came out in the 90s, and they're both kind of weird animal type superheroes. And so at the time, I don't know if Ethan was doing Cyberfrog. I don't think he was. I think he was just kind of trying to feel his way through DC, and maybe there was some fallout happening at the time. But it took him like 2 years to get back to me. And he said, yeah, I saw like on Twitter, there's an artist that was drawing the hamsters and the Cyberfrog, like some test pages. I said, well, I guess it's still on. And so Dynamite, who actually bought the rights to the hamsters from me, they own the hamsters intellectual property. They were tight with Ethan, and unfortunately, because of
things happened,
right? Comicsgate stuff happened, and there was a cover that caused a lot of division. And unfortunately, Dynamite and Ethan weren't on the same playing field anymore, and that hamster cyberfrog book kind of got caught in the crossfire. So I had written a 40-page epic story that would have been great. I don't know. Maybe someday they'll sever their differences and it'll come to being. But actually, the artist was so disappointed. The E.J. Morgis and Kanan White were supposed to draw the book, like share the artwork chores, and then this whole thing happened maybe about a month and a half ago, and it just kind of went down the tube.
Now I'm angry because before I thought it was like, okay, well, all they did was cancel an alternate cover to a book I wasn't going to read anyway and didn't really want. But now they're getting rid of stories that could have happened because they can't work with one group can't work with the other group at all, and that is,
yeah. I'm
smiling, but I'm literally angry.
Yeah, I didn't. I jumped into the comics biz maybe, getting more and more interested maybe 4 or 5 months ago. And I was really excited. And then I just see online, oh man, there's all these people that are really angry that don't talk to each other and they don't like, how you vote, and they're extremely liberal and they want to change comics. And so I'm just kind of going, I'm somewhere in the middle. I don't know where I fit in this new frontier of comics and politics. And so I'm thinking, Dynamite's cool. They're a very well-known company. They put out a great product, and they're on board with this thing with Ethan. And I'm thinking, oh, cool. And then I just got sideswiped by this whole thing. I mean, I was depressed. I was like depressed for a week because I put in, blood, sweat, and tears in the script that I thought was going to be so awesome because the two characters meet and they do, kick butt against the Vespas, which are the cyberfrog, huge, murderous hornets.
Yeah, don't throw that script away, Don. Don't throw that script away because now I'm on a mission now.
All right.
I have the quest has been put before me, and I will fight it to the bloody end.
There's a guy in the chat I think he's devastated. And it's just, unfortunately, it's not to be at this point in time, but they paid for the script and, they own it, and I got paid for the script, but I don't know if it will ever see the light of day, but that's okay.
Different world after November. It always
That's
is.
True. It could be Nick, who's the publisher at Dynamite, says, I still want to do a campaign with the hamsters, and I don't know what that's going to be yet, but I have some ideas that I want to present to him.
Dynamite's still doing some distribution deals with Ethan and company. So it started off with just the cover. Everybody kind of raised the stink over that, and you had some minor creators quit. I say minor creators because them quitting, they weren't quitting. They just weren't coming back after their contract was already over, and those contracts were over. I tie it back to when Tom King did the whole Jay Lee thing. It was almost like, all these little guys quit. Oh, look, Jay Lee did a Cyberfrog cover. Let's run a psyop on this former CIA guy. And sure enough, got Jay Lee all upset and angry, so that Dynamite said, oh, we do sell Jay Lee stuff. That does make us money. Now we have to listen, because Dynamite's statement of position didn't come out until after the Jay Lee explosion. They were, just like, okay, yeah, we're not going to put this book out. We didn't realize it was going to cause a controversy. All right, we're not doing it. It's done. And then they were quiet. And then it was like, well, that's not good enough. Let's try this. And that's my opinion. I don't know. I've heard there were other reasons why Tom went after the Jay Lee cover.
Yeah, I feel bad for Nick because he just was put in a tough position. He's got a huge heart and he's a good man, but I think you've got a lot of people to please and you can't please everyone. And he just decided to make a stand, and a lot of people followed him, and a lot of people said, I'm not into that. But
well, I think if a hamster's frog book could be shown to make money, and let's face it,
it would have done, I think it would have done really well. It's especially when people saw the artwork. And you've probably seen Kane White's artwork before. He's very good. But he might be doing actually some stuff for us, not hamsters related, but some other things. So I've been talking to him.
Now, Don, a lot of the stuff you've done is the parody and satire stuff, and I wanted to ask you about how much protection does parody give you when you get close to something? I mean, we saw the tax book. The logo in the corner was very close to the Image logo, but squashed a little bit.
Yeah, we inverted it.
So it's I just wonder, where does that line get drawn? Have you ever been approached by anybody who said you crossed it, for that matter?
The only cease and desist we got was from Marvel when we were doing the Punisher parody called The Pummeler. And The Pummeler we did with actually a Sam Keith cover on it, and Mike Barron contributed to that one, and so did Ty Templeton, who's really a good artist. And so we did that one in the 90s, and then we decided to come up with, we did Pummeler, $2,099. And then, and because they did Punisher $2,099. So we did a couple of Pummeler books, and I think we were getting ready to advertise like a Pummeler versus Sergeant USA book, which was going to be like Punisher versus Captain America spoof. And when they saw that solicited in Diamond, their lawyer sent me a letter and said, we kindly ask you to refrain using our likeness of our character on your comics. So that was the only time, we spoofed everybody from Superman to Batman to X-Men, and we had never heard a peep from anybody. But I think they were getting irritated with me taking the Punisher and kind of running him through the parody blender. So we haven't had any lawsuits. I think most people, when they see that we're doing a spoof, hopefully if they have a sense of humor, they'll actually be kind of flattered. And I think Kevin Eastman has actually said online that he liked the hamsters. He thought they were fun. So
they were very far from the Turtles. I mean, there was the obvious spoofing of it, but it wasn't like, the Pummeler to the Punisher, where you're looking at the character and saying, yeah, that's the Punisher, but goofy.
Right. Yeah. If you read the hamsters and the Turtles, they are very different. I mean, we're kind of, Parsanovich and I, we grew up with kind of an underground mentality. We read a lot of, like I said, heavy metal, and I liked like Fat Freddy's Cat and just, R. Crumb stuff. And it's very irreverent. And I grew up watching, the Airplane movies and Woody Allen and just the kind of really slapstick humor. So I'm kind of warped in that way. And Parsanovich is, he's kind of the same way. He sees things through a particular lens that is very unique. So to have us come together and do the hamsters, and obviously it struck a vein with people. People still ask me about it, and they'll write me emails and they go, I looked you up online and you're a realtor. Are you the guy that did the hamsters? I have to explain, yeah, that's me.
Yeah. I'm, as an editor for my own publishing house, yes, I do books, but outside of that, I also write for other people. And I've, written for a publishing house in England. Right now I'm writing the Destroyer series, the Warren Murphy product for Destroyer books. And I've had people at work just find this out, and they're like, what are you doing here? I'm like, well, Stephen King takes all the money and then there's just not enough left for everybody else. It's very unfair. But yeah, we kind of have to, we still want to eat. So we have to do these other things that pay more, but don't satisfy the soul so much. But what I did like, I wanted to touch on was the hamsters, their names. Obviously they're martial arts trained.
Yes.
And then there's Clint.
Yes. Yes. I was a big Dirty Harry fan. Clint Eastwood movies were like my go-to vice as a kid. So, you have Bruce, Jackie, and Chuck, who are obviously named after Chuck Norris, Bruce Lee, and Jackie Chan. And then Clint is kind of like the black sheep of the brothers.
Don't really need to know any, karate when you've got a 357 Magnum. It's just
right. Yeah.
It's like the Temple of Doom scene where it's like, boom.
Yeah. Clint was always kind of my, I think I was channeling my inner punk rocker at the time. I grew up in the 80s, kind of liked the new wave stuff. And we put a, mohawk on him and kind of the cool new wave glasses. And he's a party animal.
Purple Smurf 13 in the chat is asking, do you want to talk about the 3D books or the painted covers? Loved the Star Wars ones. So since I have read the 3D books, but that was a thing that back then it was still like the red blue 3D. It wasn't the higher tech stuff that they got now. And it's all headache inducing to me still. So even at the theaters, I'm like, I don't want to see the 3D version. No, just show me the clear one. I can't put them over my glasses anyway. But you did do a 3D Hamsters book.
We did 4. Yeah, we Eclipse. Eclipse was saying, Don, when they saw how well the first issue was selling, it was just going to be a one-shot. They said, hey, we want to make this a series. So we did our best to, come out with it on a regular basis. And then at that time, Eclipse was doing a whole bunch of different things. I mean, they were doing graphic novels and everything from humor to sci-fi, and they were doing 3D books. I think maybe their first one was maybe the 3D Three Stooges or something like that, and it sold great. And so they said, why don't we do a 3D Hamsters book? And so I wrote a script, and Parsanovich did this really cool psychedelic, cover on it. And then Ty Templeton, who I thought did probably one of the best versions of the Hamsters. I wish he could have stayed on and did more, because I really like the way, in fact, he's the guy that did that big poster that I'm showing you in the background. Sweet. It's that's only a one of a kind. It's actually a silkscreen sleeping bag design that never got manufactured, because back in the day I had an agent for the Hamsters trying to get me some licensing deals, and he actually contacted this kind of children's clothing place in New York. I think they were called the Bib Company. I don't know if they're still around, but they did a lot of the Turtles pajamas. And so that's actually a sleeping bag design that they sent me back in 1990, and it never was produced, but that's Ty's artwork on the Hamsters.
And it makes for a great banner.
Yeah, I like it. I got it out of the garage and decided to hang it up for our little chat today. Well,
thank you for planning ahead.
I like all the swag, back there. So anyways, the book sold well, and it came with these 2 little, cardboard 3D glasses that were bound into the spine. So you would take the glasses apart and then pop out the little cardboard covers over the red and blue lenses, and then you'd have these 2 little paper hinges that you fit onto the glasses. And the 3Ds were great because they were done by Ray Zone, who was like the king of 3D. He's passed.
How do you plan for a 3D book when you're if you're not the 3D artist drawing it? Do you just say, this is what has to pop out, and this is going to be in the background? I don't even know how you would plan that kind of thing.
Yeah, I just wrote the script pretty much the way I would write the regular Hamsters script, but each 3D book was its own individual story. Like the first one was if they were professional wrestlers, and then the second one was the Star Wars issue that was mentioned in the chat, and that had a beautiful Mike Dringenberg kind of like movie-esque cover. And so that was a cross between what if the Hamsters were in Star Wars and the Wizard of Oz. And then number 3 was Night of the Living Dolls, where the Hamsters have to go up against these zombie nuclear meltdown kids dolls that were kind of like Cabbage Patch Kids that went totally off the deep end. And the last issue was a Christmas issue, which was kind of done in a funny animal, Hanna-Barbera type of style.
Cool.
So that was the 4 3D issues that Eclipse published. They were a lot of fun.
And those had painted covers, or was that a different set that had painted covers?
The only one, I think, number 2 and 3, the Star Wars one and the Living Dead dolls were both painted. The number 3 was not painted by Mike. It was painted by Ken Meyer, who was the guy that I used to work with on Megaton. He actually did the X-Cons covers as well. So Ken's been around a long time. He's got a really great kind of a painted art style. Delphin's asking about the Skunk.
I had not heard of the Skunk.
You haven't heard of the Skunk?
I thought I'd seen every one of the. I think I've covered every one of the ones that I saw in the era, except for Megaton Man, which I don't want to confuse with Megaton, and Destroy. I don't know if you saw Destroy when it came out.
Scott McCloud.
Is that Scott McCloud? Yeah, it was just a one word the whole time. Destroy, destroy, destroy.
Wasn't that like oversized, like a jumbo?
It was, yeah.
I think I used to have that. I liked his work on Zot a lot. He's very, very talented.
I've got both Understanding and Reinventing back there on the shelf.
I saw you mention that on there. So I see some people in the chat. This is great. Hi, Heroinberg. She's on a lot of Ethan's streams, and they publish their own comic and have their own YouTube channel with
live action show.
Exactly. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
I've got their book bagged away here. Have you seen their book?
They sent me a copy.
Yeah, that's really like cardstock all the way through. You can't make that thing non-mint. So
that's true. I wanted to just address Dolphin and the Skunk. The Skunk was actually the Tick was really big and popular, and so we thought, well, what if we do this kind of take on the Tick that's the Skunk? And my wife actually came up with the concept as well, Laura, she's my right hand person when it comes to production. She did a lot of the coloring and pre-press and all that. So she's kind of the yin to my yang in comics and does a lot of the behind the scenes work. But the Skunk was something that she had conceived, with Bill and I, and we thought, what if we had this superhero who could fart like a hurricane force winds? So that's the Skunk. What's that?
Like the spleen in Mystery Men.
Oh, there you go. Exactly. I love that movie.
Yeah,
that was fun.
Nobody gets a really gross superpower. And the Skunk being that way, it reminds me of when the first Spider-Man movie came out, and his web shooters were organic, and they would come out of his wrists. I remember saying, if they were going to be the result of the mutation, wouldn't the webs come out of his butt? But then the movie would have gotten an entirely different rating, and I wouldn't have been able to go watch it.
They should do a what if Peter shot webs out of his.
It would be a one page Hembeck strip. I was like, and just he's always got to turn around and aim and
He'd be swinging backwards through, this guy. That's hilarious.
That's where the spider's webs come out of. So, and you don't get two of them. Just to make it easy on the movie makers, you only get one spinneret.
Oh, man. Stan Lee's rolling in his grave now.
Stan Lee'd laugh at it.
Oh, man, that's funny.
That I'm sure he means that's why he never liked Spider-Man, because if he piked, he's not Vlad the Impaler, Hammer of Doom. That's why I never liked Spider-Man. Yeah, well, I like the Spider-Man that made his web shooters, because that showed. Of course, then that takes me back to Secret Wars, which asked the same question I always asked, which was, why is Peter Parker smart enough to make an electronic gadget to fire web shooters of a chemical formula that he also made, which could have been sold to 3M for, a couple of $1 million. But he's out here scrounging photos for J. Jonah Jameson. And then, of course, in Secret Wars, they're trapped under a mountain, and Reed Richards is trying to save them all. He's like, let me see your web shooters. And Peter's like, what do you mean web shooters? And, you got those things around your wrist that you shoot your webs out of. And he starts looking at it. He's like, the microcircuitry on this thing is really impressive. I'm like, damn, that's like, Bill Gates saying, "That's an elegant piece of code you've written there. You've impressed the man. Make some bucks with this." But do you still own the Skunk? I guess is the next question.
Actually, I think Bill still was the brains behind it, and he might have done after Parody Press kind of folded in the 90s, and I went into real estate. Bill was trying to carry the mantle of Parody Press, and he might have done a few Skunks here and there. But I think the last time I asked Bill about it, he said he actually had sold the rights to someone else. I don't know who or if that'll ever come back again. But
so we can't get a Skunk Frog book either then?
Probably not.
Okay.
I'll see what I can do.
And I'm guessing now, since Dynamite owns the hamsters, you're not going to be able to put any hamster swag in any crowdfunded books coming up, like stickers and stuff.
No, not unless Bill gave, or not Bill. I'm sorry, not unless Nick gives it his blessing.
I got you. Well, and I say stickers because we have some. We have 3-inch holofoil stickers. I got rid of the last single one, so this is another stack. It's ready to be opened, and these can be to anybody in the chat. All you have to do is send a self-addressed stamped envelope to Critical Blast at 1097 Prestwick Drive, Belleville, Illinois 62221, and I will open up your envelope to me and pull out your envelope to you, and I'll put 2 of these in here so that you can give one to a friend, and that way I monetize you and weaponize you to become.
I want one. I'm going to have to take you up on that. So
hit me up in the DM. I'll get okay. Don. I will take care of you, my friend. I will get you the Critical Blast keychain.
Ooh,
and the Critical Blast lapel pins.
That's nice. If I ever get lost on a hike, I can use that as a mirror to
exactly just
show people where I'm at.
That works on the Brady Bunch. When they get lost in Grand Canyon, somebody did that. Maybe it wasn't the Brady Bunch in the Grand Canyon, but somebody did it with a mirror and they flashed. Might have been an episode of ISIS. I don't know. I watched a lot of television in the 70s, and everybody did it.
Oh yeah, ISIS and Shazam and gosh, those live action ones were so cheesy but so fun. Land of the Lost. Oh, classic.
Land of the Lost had a great mystery going for it until they got rid of the dad and replaced him with the uncle, because they're like, wait a second, they're not in time because there's like 3 moons. And I remember the thing that really freaked me out. I don't know, I was like 12, maybe younger, watching this, was when they stood on the mountain and looked through the binoculars and saw the back of their own heads. I'm like, wow, that doesn't work that way. So I never did get to answer, all those questions that were set up. It was very complex, a very complex mystery, and they just, treated like, yeah, but it's going to be a weekly adventure, and they're never going to get home because they'd have to go through the magic portal. There was a movie, not the Land in the
Will Ferrell, right? I never saw the movie. It looked really not very good. The Land of the Lost.
That movie wasn't very good. But there was another movie where they had a character who was named Marshall, Will, and Holly. And it's like, Marshall, Will, and Holly. Expedition.
Yeah.
So Big Alice freaked me out. Who's Big Alice? Oh,
Is that like Large Marge from Pee Wee Herman? Big Alice?
Yeah, she freaked me out too. That was a spring-loaded cat moment in the movie for me. Like, I was not expecting it the first time. Now it's fun, watching it with my kids, knowing this is coming up. I'm going to watch you.
Oh yeah, that scene where she her eyes pop out, and like the Tim Burton scare tactic there.
Yeah. He says Big Alice was the T-Rex, so that's cool.
Oh, the T-Rex. Okay.
And of course, there was Chaka.
It's been a while.
Chaka and Enoch. And Enoch really made it a mystery, because I knew I was raised in an apostolic household. I had to go to church 5 times a week almost. So I knew who Enoch was in the Bible. It's like, oh, Enoch walked with God and was not, for God took him. Yes, I could quote it at 9 because we were made to memorize verses. So I was like, what is that, Enoch?
Was it Chaka you said? He had really bad teeth, didn't he? He was like a little prehistoric kind of caveman.
Yeah, Chaka was the Ewok, and Enoch was the big Sleestack that could talk and was like the one that all the other ones hated, but he was more powerful than all of them. So how do we get talking about 70s television instead of parody comics and
I don't know.
Indies?
We grew up probably watching and reading the same stuff, so that's cool. We're just old farts talking.
I know. You young kids don't know what it's like to have to get up on a Saturday morning and pour yourself a big bowl of cereal, and that's the only time you get to watch the cartoons.
Yeah, kids have it easy now. I mean, they can stream it and they have no idea.
If you miss an episode on a Saturday, you don't know how many weeks might go by before you catch that replay again.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I would have to get the comic books out, and because the fall comic books or the summer comic books had that middle center spread that said, "Hey, here's what's the cartoons are going to be on NBC, and here's what's going to be on TV."
Yeah.
3 channels to pick from, and I'm like, I'm sitting there taking this seriously because I'm like, okay, I don't care about in the news, but I can switch over here to catch, Shazam and Isis. And, they're going to do Batman and Tarzan. And they're not going to be together though.
Right.
So I knew where to switch the channels to and get around. I was watching everything Super.
That was like our TV guide back then for kids.
It was our TV guide.
Comic book ads and yeah, that was fun. I remember that.
You realize you just said that was our TV guide to a generation that doesn't even know what the TV guide is, because it's just a menu on the screen.
I know. Oh, wow.
Oh, well, Don, this has been a lot of fun. I'm glad we had this chance to talk. I hope we get to do it again real soon here when you launch something out here, because I would love to, have your campaign up and ready to go and, direct people toward it.
Thanks, RJ. You're actually the first person I've kind of told about it. So you're my launching pad. This is actually my first live stream that I've done with video. I've done some live audio interviews with the Gospel of Comics, but you're my first camera.
You've got a great camera set up there, because a lot of people who've never done it before, they get the running on a Commodore 64 with a Polaroid hooked up to it or something, because it's all halting and it's frozen. You've got a professional setup going here.
I have an Apple laptop, and so you might have to teach me some streaming tips, because I just signed up for StreamYard, and that seems to be what everybody's using to broadcast. And it's free unless you want to do something with it other than stream, put up something like that, that's cool.
You can only do that with at least the first level of payments, $25 a month for it. You saw when I had Graham Nolan on the other night, I had the snowscape in there. I keep trying to use this one, but it always lands on somebody's face. And then I never get to use the books, which here's all the books we just talked about. And then of course the LCS guys have their own banner and border. But yeah, it's all fun. I try to come up with a border for every creator when I can, that is sort of,
I love it.
If somebody comes in late, they can get an idea immediately of who we're talking to. Of course, I'm just covering your name, which would automatically do that for them.
Did you have to like kind of cut around the character to mask that off, or how did
you know what? I have absolutely no artistic abilities at all, but I use PowerPoint, and PowerPoint, I can say, remove background, and it draws a square around something and it tries to remove the background, but then I can say, no, keep this area, remove that area. It's just click, 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 click until it's done. I don't have to cut carefully around anything.
Wow.
And then I just save it, and it's all transparent behind it so that we can see you and me behind the characters here. I just save it as a PNG inside of PowerPoint. I've animated cartoons in PowerPoint, so it's tedious, but it can be done.
Can you put like a custom graphic background behind you?
You absolutely can. In fact, I've got this one going on here, but if you're talking more like a green screen, like just behind you, absolutely, green screen is an option on here if you have a high processing machine, and I think you do. You got that Apple. In fact, Hammer of Doom was saying to take a picture of that sleeping bag and use it for a green screen background. And then
Good idea.
Under your settings here and your camera settings, it's green screen is an option. So Mandy Summers uses StreamYard and green screen. So everything that's behind her is always green screen. I've seen a couple of others do it as well. I want to do a green shirt.
So when you first signed up to StreamYard, do they limit how many people can be in the chat?
They limited, not in the chat. Well,
I'm sorry, on the screen.
Yes, they did. I think it's up to 10 now, maybe even a little bit more, 10 guests, but it was like half that before. But the reason I ended up paying for it to move ahead was because they were also limiting how many hours you could stream a month. And I did not know that until I approached it. I was like, I'm only, 2/3 through the month here, and you just told me I have 10 more hours. And I'm like, that's like 3 more streams. Now, granted, I'm not doing super chats for all you folk in the chat who are looking for that dollar button and trying to send us money here. We don't do that. I say that like it's a moral choice. We can't do that. We have the subscriber base. Thank you all very much for that. We're up over 1,000. We qualify there. But you also have to have 4,000 hours of watch time within the last 12-month period, and we're at like 1,390. So we got, if you want to help us out, just log on to our channel before you go to bed, mute it and press play on a playlist and let it just go all night. We would love you very much for that.
How many shows do you wind up doing a week on average?
I try to do one a night. I mean, I have literally a little black book, and I schedule everybody, for 2 weeks down here. The LCS guys every other Saturday. I'd like to get like a couple of more LCS guys and do an alternating Saturday show. I got you down here for Wednesday. Tomorrow's open. If anybody's pushing a comic and they want to get on here and talk about it, shoot us a DM at Critical Blast on Twitter. And then Friday, I have Adam Lawson coming on to talk his book. And then I'm open again until Monday, when I'll have Doug Ernst on Monday the 7th to talk about his books. I've got a lot of openings right now. And, when I say that, they start to fill up real quick. So if I can do it every night, I'll do it every night. I love talking to the different creators, and this was a lot of fun. You ask great questions, and you're very engaging, and I'm so happy to see so many people in the chat. It's I didn't know if there would be much of a turnout, but I'm glad people interacted. Yeah, we have 8 people in the chat right now, and that's like 6 more than usually I have on a really good chat. So yeah, we are the least watched, most clout thirsty channel on the internet. So I have been told, and I'm owning that.
You got to start somewhere, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is Critical Blast is like 5 years old, but it's a website. It was just a review website to review DVDs and movies and books because I like getting free DVDs and movies and books, and ran the ad revenue, which kind of sort of pays for the cost of the ad site. But when I did it, I said, let's make sure that every social media channel has the name open for us first before we decide on a name. And Critical Blast was the first one where it was like across the board, it was all open. I'm like, okay, grab them all, and now we'll register the name. So we had the YouTube channel from the beginning. We uploaded some videos that we would make. They were all pre-recorded things. Live streaming was just cumbersome at the time if you were going to do it at all. So, like one of the first interviews we got up here, I interviewed Harlan Ellison at a science fiction convention, and I asked him a question, and he told me it was a very stupid question, and then we went on from there, which I expected. So it was like, perfect. Thank you for living up to the expectation there, sir.
Yeah, I ran into him once at a San Diego con in an elevator, and he made some kind of inappropriate joke. Yeah.
His wife is a sweetheart though, but she's like I don't know if you met Susan, but she's like a badass Mary Poppins. She's British. She's very pretty. But when I was at the convention, I was standing behind the table with him, getting the things set up for the interview we would do later, and it was time for him to go. And they were like, "Okay, well, somebody go to the end of the line and put a marker saying this one, last one here and no further, because he's got to go." So Susan went out to do it. Susan did not have anything on that identified her as being. I didn't pause there for that kind of a reason. She did not have any identification that she was authoritative with the convention. She just had a badge. So she says, okay, we're stopping here. And the guy whom she was in front of said, well, what right do you have to put it here? Who are you? Who do you think you are? She proceeded to tell him who she was and let the next 5 people behind him go, but not him. So I was like, that's badass.
Whoops.
But
that's awesome. Well, this has been a lot of fun. I would be happy to come back on when we actually have more to report. And I appreciate it.
Everybody who comes on that hasn't funded, if they fund after they've been on, even if it's like 2 months later, I take the credit. I take all credit for that. But we have some people who do get serious about funding their comics, and when they have a funding show on here, I've gotten to the point now where I can frequently guarantee 1 or 2 funds added to an account on a campaign. So that makes me very happy that I'm contributing now in some fashion because I don't do comics. I could write comics if I wanted, but I don't have an artist and I can't afford an artist, so I do this. I'll stick with this.
Well, that's great.
All right. Well, Don, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate your time. And
thank you, RJ. Thanks everyone that showed up. It was a lot of fun.
Everybody in chat, thank you very much. And we will be back Friday if we're not back tomorrow. Good night, everybody. Hi. Thanks for stopping by for another Critical Blast video. The internet is a big place, and we know there are lots of other places you could be other than here, and we appreciate you being here immensely. If you enjoyed this kind of content, we hope you'll return for more. If you click the subscribe button, you'll get a little notification of when we produce new video content. If you would like to help the channel out, there are many ways to do so. Just visiting our main hub, criticalblast.com, will do wonders. But if you're more of a show me the merchandise type of person, there are links in the description of this video to our t-shirt shop, as well as links to Amazon for the books we publish under the Critical Blast Publishing imprint, including the urban fantasy anthology Gods and Services and the YA superhero novel Bulletproof by Stephen J. Mitchell. Thanks again for visiting this video.